Today we're going to be talking about the Nikon ZR, a super popular camera that has recently come out and a lot of people are talking about it and for good reason. So today I want to just kind of give you my first impressions and a couple of things that have just kind of stood out to me today as I've started testing it. Just to address one thing real quick, I did put out a video like 2 weeks ago saying that I cancelled my order for the Nikon ZR. That is true. I rented this. If you don't know if you want to buy something or not and you aren't sure if you want to spend the money, rent something. It is a really good way of just saving some money. Personally, I rented mine from Lens Rentals. It was super easy, really easy to do. No affiliation. They have no idea I'm making this video. Never talked to them, but I've rented gear from them quite a bit and it's incredibly useful. I'll have it for a week and then I'm going to send it back. But today we're just talking about first impressions. The body, the feel, the usage, the menus, the settings, all of that kind of stuff, and a couple of little sample shots. And this is coming from the perspective of somebody who primarily does YouTube, right? I test out camera gear and I talk about camera gear, and I am looking for a camera that can both do this, a really high quality talking headshot. This is like my main thing. So I do a lot of these talking headshots, which means I need a camera that can take a great talking headshot, but not take up a huge amount of memory space. Because I'm going to ramble here for 30 minutes and then cut it down to 10. So that's where the H.265 testing is going to come in for this camera. I understand there's been some controversy around the H.265 and we're going to address that in this video. But also I like to take cameras out and test lenses and try to get really high quality images that I can use for the channel. First off, I just want to run down a bunch of things about this camera that just right off the bat really were standout features to me whenever I got it in my hands and I started using it. First off, let's just talk about the size. This camera is very small, but also probably not quite as small as you think. It's a fair bit bigger than my Lumix S9. It's taller than you might expect. However, it is very slim. So as you can see, like the actual depth of the camera is super slim. And one of the things that's really impressive is how much they managed to get into this thing, not have it overheat with no fan. Big standout features that you've heard before, this screen is crazy big. I mean, I heard about it and I saw it online, but whenever you start using this, it's just fantastic. When I go back to my other cameras now, looking at my FX30 up here, that little monitor looks tiny. Like, I don't understand how I've been using it for this long. So this feels as big of an upgrade of a screen as it did whenever I moved up to the Blackmagic Pocket cameras, which have phenomenal screens built onto the back, except that this one swivels, spins, and does all the other stuff. One other standout feature that I thought about the screen that people have mentioned, but I didn't really pay all that much attention to, is actually the brightness. The monitor is very bright. I think it's actually 1000 nits, which is brighter than quite a few monitors, like external monitors that people add to their cameras. So 1000 nit brightness really does mean that you don't need an external monitor. A monitor of this size, this quality, because it looks really good on here as well. I can see why they built this in a way that would make people think I don't need to add an external monitor. The monitor, very, very impressive. Another thing that's just worth pointing out, by the way, is the boot up speed of this camera. I'm just going to hold it up and you'll watch me press this power button. As soon as I press this in, watch how quickly this turns on and is ready to shoot. It's ready. That is just insanely fast. And again, for turning off, it's off. It's ready to go. It's so fast to turn on. One of the things is you'll notice the green light on the power button does turn off. So if you have your monitor tucked away, it could be quite easy for you to just leave the camera on and not know, because there's nothing on the camera to tell me right now that the camera is on. So maybe just keep the monitor out. Another standout feature for me, this little rocker, being able to use this to sort of punch in and check critical focus is really, really handy. And you can zoom way in, like super, super far in, and then zoom back out again. I never really use these rockers as like digital zoom. I don't tend to use digital zoom. So using it for checking focus, I think is genius. Really, really like that. Now, one thing that surprised me is obviously the lack of buttons on this camera. There are 3 back here, like 3 buttons here, and then it's got like 3 function buttons on the top. And that's kind of it. Now, I like having a lot of buttons on my camera. I like being able to sort of do things manually. I hate having to dig into the menus for things. But in saying that, it surprisingly hasn't bothered me with this camera. I don't know why that is. This quick menu sort of thing that it has on here, plus the size of the screen, makes that pretty simple. But they have managed to set up the camera in a way that I don't feel like I need to dive into the menus as much as I do in other cameras. It is pouring down rain right now. On the left-hand side of the camera, you do have a mic and headphone jack. Nice, make sure to get your headphone jack there. That is always useful. And you also get a micro HDMI and a USB-C. I know a lot of people are going to be frustrated about the micro HDMI. It is what it is. I have a couple of ideas for products of how we could make that work. So companies like Small Rig or, cage manufacturers, let me know if you want to make a cage together for this thing, because I got some ideas. Now, on the bottom, one thing that surprised me is the single screw there, the single 1/4-20 thread. This is a cinema camera. It is called Z Cinema. It is labeled as a cinema camera. The body itself doesn't feel overly cinema camera-y, but in saying that, it doesn't feel like any other camera. Granted, it doesn't have like a big grip, but the grip doesn't feel bad. If you have sort of normal sized hands, the grip is fine. But the thing that is surprising is just the 1/4-20 thread on the bottom. I kind of expected to get a little bit more. And another thing that just kind of bothers me about the bottom of the camera is underneath the battery compartment here, you have your battery. Battery life seems good. I've been sort of playing around with it for a lot of today, and it's worked great. Like, I think I'm barely through a battery, so battery life seems really great. And it has 2 memory card slots. You have a micro SD slot and a CF Express Type B slot. CF Express Type B makes a lot of sense because with this R3D, you're capturing like a lot of bits for every second that you're filming. I got a 512 gigabyte card by Lexar, and I can get 43 minutes on it for 512 gigabytes. So half a terabyte gets me 40 minutes. So this thing is hungry if you choose to film in the R3D. So it makes sense to have the CF Express Type B card. Now, the micro SD, I actually think is genius. I know a lot of people complain about this. I think it's genius. I really do. I said the same thing about my Nikon ZF. Having the micro SD, basically what I would highly recommend doing, if you have this camera, buy yourself a 1 terabyte micro SD card and just put it in the camera and don't touch it ever again. What that means is if you show up to set, if you show up to a wedding, or if you do the thing that we've all done, which is you show up to set and you forget your memory cards, well, you've got that micro SD that can act as internal storage. Now, you can only record the H.265. You cannot record the R3D, but that's better than nothing. So if you find yourself in an absolute pinch where you've traveled a couple 100 miles to go film a wedding and you forgot your cards, keep that micro SD in there and you have a backup that will last you all day. Again, a terabyte on there of the H.265, you'll film all day. You won't have any problems. So that's just nice to have. I would rather have this than no second slot. And again, with the way that they've designed it, there is no space for a second slot. So again, I would take it. Now, as for it being in the battery door, it's not the end of the world, but I don't like it. I would much rather have it as a side access. It works. You can access it fine, but it is more inconvenient than it would be if it's on the side. So I'd prefer it on the side, but it's not the end of the world. One little thing that I would just make sure that you're aware of, you can probably turn this off. On the front of the camera there is a tiny little record button. I don't know if you can see that. I was walking with this through the hallway and I was looking at the camera and I could not figure out, the thing just kept starting record, stopping record, starting record, stopping record. And I was like, is it broken? Like, I'm not doing anything. I didn't realize that I'd been pressing in that button. It's very easy to press. So just keep an eye on that or disable it if you can in the menus. But I figured I would make you aware because I panicked for a second. And of course, in typical fashion, as soon as I get this camera in, we're going to have rain all week. So what I did is I just set this up and I captured one simple clip and I compared the H.265 to the R3D. And one of the things that I've seen in a lot of videos is that the H.265 is muddy. Very, very muddy. It looks incredibly compressed. However, this shot is also an H.265 and it looks completely fine. Actually, it looks very, very sharp. And so the thing that I found out is that it seems like the biggest problem with the H.265 in this camera is not the H.265, but it's N-Log. For some reason, N-Log footage is really, really heavily compressed. Or it's doing something that just kind of muddies up the image and makes it look really blocky. This looks like 1080p, maybe 4K footage, but this is 5.9K, I think. And it should look really, really good. But again, swap over to this one. This one looks incredibly sharp, but is also H.265. The difference is this one is in HLG. So here's what I did is I set up the same shot and I recorded it 4 times back to back to back to back. Firstly, this shot is just filmed in standard, right? So no picture profile, this is just standard, and then I color graded it in post. I think it looks fine. It's a little bit more contrasty than I like. I actually had to drop the contrast quite a lot to kind of get it to the way that I like it to look. Second up, it was HLG, which kind of looks like this straight out of camera. It's a little bit flatter, but it's not that flat. And it cleaned up really nice, and I was able to get some really nice, sharp, detailed footage. Once I had that color grade applied, I think it looks really, really good, and I'm very happy with the way that the HLG looks. Then you hop into the N-Log, and for some reason the whole thing just falls apart. And no, I think the colors look really nice. I prefer the colors out of the N-Log than I do to the HLG, just by a little bit. And again, I graded all of these independently. They don't have matching color grades. I graded them all in the way that I thought worked best with each clip, because I feel like that's what you should do with any clip that you record. But I do like the colors that came out of the N-Log more than HLG. It was a little bit easier to work with. Now, if I put all 3 up on the screen, I actually think that the standard is too sharp, right? It seems way over sharpened, and the HLG just lands in that really sweet spot in the middle. And the N-Log, I don't know. I don't want to say unusable, but certainly worse looking by a pretty substantial margin. So HLG is probably where I'm going to land if I'm wanting to get easy, quick clips, especially in a room like this, right? If you're in a controlled environment like I am right now using studio lighting, granted HLG is probably not going to have as much dynamic range as N-Log will, but in a studio environment, I don't need that much dynamic range because I'm controlling all of the lighting. So that works out for me just fine. If you're controlling the lighting, I don't think you need to worry. And then if I want to shoot in log and I need to have all of that control, I'm going to hop over to the R3D. So if I'm filming out and about and I'm trying to get the highest quality and I want to get the most dynamic range that I can out of this camera, that's when I'm hopping over to the R3D. And I think this is kind of a sweet spot for me. Now, what I will say is I think the R3D looks lovely. I really like the smoothness, right? The difference in the highlight roll-off and just this sort of fluffiness yet sharpness and detail that you get from the R3D is very pleasing. Color-wise, you can push them around to get them pretty close, but I have to say, I really do like the R3D look. But for studio work, and for just taking long form clips, like if I'm wanting to record a podcast for 45 minutes, I'm probably not going to use the R3D because I don't want to end up with 500 gigabytes of footage from one camera. Or if I'm at a wedding, filming a reception, like that would fill up a card just the reception. So I'm probably going to use the HLG when I can, especially for long form clips, compared to the R3D, which is going to be used more for the cinematic sort of B-roll style stuff. I hope that makes sense. So I did rent the Nikon ZR, obviously, but I also rented the Nikon 20mm f1.8. I was going to go for a 24, but they don't have one. Now, another reason that I got the 20mm is because I actually have the Sony 20mm f1.8. This is the Nikon 20mm 1.8. Look at the size difference these two. But I will be comparing the Sony native 20mm 1.8 and the Nikon native 20mm 1.8, obviously adapting the Sony onto Nikon, and we'll do a test so that you guys can see exactly the difference between two comparable lenses on the same camera. So I will do a test of that down the line, but for now what we're going to do is we're going to stick the Nikon 20mm f1.8 onto this camera and swap it out for my Lumix S9. Now you're going to notice a slight difference because Lumix S9 is currently at 24mm at f1.8, and now we're about to go to 20. So it is going to get a little bit wider, but hopefully you'll be able to see a little bit of a difference, and I'll tell you what I think. All right, so now we are on the Nikon ZR in HLG H.265, full autofocus. Is it working? Looks like it's working. That's good. I have to say, having that screen, the screen is giant. It's awesome. It's really cool. So really liking that. Definitely makes a big difference. So that's a really big thing. One thing I have to say, I don't know if I can show you this on my phone here, but the image that I'm getting on the screen looks really overexposed. Let me see if I can sort of show that there. On the screen, I am like white hot, yet my waveform is showing that I am underexposed, mostly underexposed. So I think the background's probably a little underexposed. I'll raise it in post just to sort of get a good balance of it. But yes, I don't trust the screen. Chances are that it's user error. Again, I'm an idiot. So if there's a setting that I need to change, to make the image of the screen more accurate, please do let me know, because this will throw me off a lot. Anyway, that was a bit of a ramble. What do you think? What do you think of this lens? This is a 20mm f1.8. It's quite an expensive lens. I think it's like $800 or $900. It's looking nice. I quite like the way that this looks. I actually think I might prefer the 20mm to the 24. But I want to know what your thoughts are. Again, this is the HLG, and I do think this looks nice and sharp. It looks nice and detailed, especially compared to the N-Log. And we'll switch over to the R3D RAW here as well, so that you can tell me what you think about that as well. And now we're in the R3D NE RAW. Let me know what you think. I do think that this does look better, especially when I was looking at those outdoor shots. But this is going to be a little bit different, right? Because now that we're indoors, we're in a controlled environment. I'm controlling all of the lighting and all of the colors. In theory, they should look closer because, again, the more control you have over the lighting, the better, lower quality video looks. That's a whole other conversation for another time, I guess. But I want you to tell me what you think, especially for talking head piece like this, because this could be a make it or break it decision for me. Looking at the original Lumix S9 footage compared to the H.265, which is this one here, and now looking back again at the R3D RAW, which one do you like the best? Which one has been the best performer? How's the autofocus been? This is actually my second take of this because the autofocus the first time didn't work. I had it in AFC and it just wasn't doing anything. Now it's in AFF and it's working great, which is autofocus full time, I think is what they call it. So I don't know. Again, first day with the camera, figuring it out. I want you to tell me what you think. I'm hoping that this isn't necessary for the talking head shot because I don't want to deal with the file sizes. But again, it is up to you, the audience, to tell me what you think, because most of you know better than I do anyway. So I'm just an idiot who rants about cameras here on the internet. So let me know what you think. I'm going to hop back over to the HLG because I want the smaller files. So back to HLG. This, I realize that I'm spending quite a lot of time talking about this, but for me, this is important, right? Because this is one of the main things that I do, which is talking headshots. And that is a really important thing. I do a lot of podcast filming and I do a lot of talking head shots in general for churches and for real estate stuff, but also for YouTube. This is like the main thing that I do, and I like this shot to look good. So I need you to tell me what you think, because your opinion does matter. So do let me know in the comments down below, which of these settings and file types and colors and looks do you think works best? Take into consideration the file sizes, all of that kind of stuff. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Again, this is day one. This is day one with the camera. I've got a lot more videos coming, so if you're excited for those, do hit the subscribe button because it helps, thanks. And I've got about 3 or 4 different videos planned. If you have any questions, throw them in the comments down below. I'll try to get to them. If you've enjoyed the video, hit the like button, drop a comment, and maybe even subscribe as we continue to build this channel. I appreciate all of you for doing so, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.